You are listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee, other co-host. You may have seen walking out of Barber Lounge 459 with big old smile on his face. You probably see him at a dirt track. He is the one and only Scott Bowie.
Hello, Aaron.
Mr. Bowie, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So this will be released on Wednesday. So by this time, we will have our second live show at McGilvery's Pub and Eatery and Speedway. So if you came out, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. And we will actually be releasing that episode, just the audio like we did with our first one, next week. So stay tuned for that. Couple announcements real quick. First off, this episode, we left it open last week, but we were releasing interview with Sting Ray Robb. Obviously finished second in the Indy Lights Championship, and lots of race wins in the road to Indy ladder. Great guy, great talk. I know he's tested IndyCar. I know he has some potential opportunities for a full season ride in IndyCar in 2023. So definitely rooting for him. Great guy, and just great guy to talk to. Huge fan.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, I'd never met him before,
Yeah.
and he was super nice. He, he loves the sport, and he's passionate, and he wants to do it, and he's taking his opportunity as he can get it. And man, I wish him nothing but the best. I really enjoyed the interview.
Representing Idaho, that's for sure.
Yep, representing Idaho. It's him, the Hamiltons, as he pointed out, because I'd forgotten, and Randy Tolsma, and I think that's about it.
Right. It's cool. So a couple announcements real quick. Special thanks to obviously McGilvery's. If you've come out to our shows, thank you so much for coming. Definitely means a lot to us. December 6th is planning to be our next one. Still trying to completely confirm, but it will be a big show. That's planned now. What we have planned, it will be really big show. There'll be a lot of people, so definitely come out to that one. You won't want to miss it. But we'll announce when we get a little closer and kind of firm everything up. Special thanks to Top Gun Racing, Grand King Race Shops for helping us set that up and being a sponsor of the show. Also, Racer Collect, Patrick Patton has kind of been with us kind of from the beginning, pretty early on. So special thanks to him. If you look for any racing memorabilia, please go to racercollect.com. Also, first off, if we look over here, Scott Bowie, he is nice and comfortable. So yeah, we're going there. So it's getting colder now. So air conditioners went out. Don't need them right now, but we need heat.
Well, I turned mine on yesterday.
I did too.
It was warm in the house, so I had to turn mine back on. But I knew it would start because the good folks, the good guys, Heating and Air, installed a new air conditioner for me, and it has worked flawlessly.
Absolutely. So check out Good Guys. Yep. But something else before I forget, speaking of Top Gun Racing and Grand King Race Shops, November 11th and 12th, they will be doing a special event.
You got the dates right.
I did. Got to get those dates right. November 11th and 12th, the Grand King Race Shops will be doing a special live speaking event with Randy Lanier in person. He will be there. And also that will have following a book signing meet and greet. So definitely check out. I posted the flyer on our social media. Check out Grand King Race Shops, or just go to our social media, Instagram, Facebook, even Twitter. I have the flyer on there. Call Stephanie, buy your tickets, or reserve your book now. And yeah, it will be a great event. Definitely looking forward to that. Randy's a great guy to talk to for sure. One of the best stories in sports. There's a Netflix documentary about him, part of the Bat Sports series called Need for Weed. Also, he has a book out. I'm going to mess up the name of it. He has a book called Survival of the Fastest. I got it right here. Just remember it. So definitely check out the book. He was also on Dale Jr.'s podcast. And he was on our podcast as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that was a good talk, and it's really interesting hearing just talk about those times, and as you can imagine, I mean, it's self-induced stress, but he was under a lot of stress, and he's trying to be a
Sure.
race car driver, and he's moving millions of pounds of illegal substances, and just it's pretty amazing he was able to accomplish any of it, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
tickets are going pretty quick for that, so I hear. So if anybody's wanting to go, you better get your tickets soon, as seats are getting slim.
Absolutely. So definitely, yeah, it will definitely be a good time. Um, but I think that is it for kind of announcements. So first off, we had NASCAR at Homestead Miami Speedway. Kyle Larson won. Good to see him back in victory lane.
Yep, Kyle Larson, definitely, kind of getting back into the groove, back in these winning ways. That was by far his best race of the year.
Yeah.
So why ever they've been struggling, it looks like maybe they've got it figured out. Although it's a little late, they don't have a chance to win the championship now. But hey, if you can go in and muddy the water and win a bunch of races at the end, that's good too. Bubba Wallace was sat down for this race because of the incident between he and Kyle. One race suspension. Obviously, he'll be back next race. So I think NASCAR sent a message on that. Um, and they kind of have to get a handle on a little bit of this intentionally dumping each other, and because it's been growing and growing and growing, then walking across the track when it's hot, and then engaging someone who did not want to participate in any type of fight. So I think they sent her a message, and I'm sure Bubba probably wishes he could take a little bit of that back. So I don't think you'll see anything in the future, at least like that. Um, F1 at Coda, and man, Verstappen wins again. But the real conversation piece is the amount of fans that they
Man,
had
like
this weekend.
400,000. I mean, was that one day?
No, that was a culmination.
Culmination. Okay. But they had, I
So
mean, they had a huge crowd there on qualification day.
yes,
It looked like race day, really. So, it just, obviously Netflix, Try to Survive. I mean, man, that has done amazing things for Formula One. I mean, the people that are getting involved in it now that are becoming fans because of a Netflix documentary. And
well,
it's all about marketing.
Robin recently met some people who from the East Coast. They moved to Indianapolis about a year ago or so, and they absolutely love F1 because the drivers survive, and they absolutely had no idea Indy cars existed. And that is an eye opener that I think that more people need to have their eyes open to.
And it comes
You
down to
know,
marketing, right? It's all part of the
it does.
marketing plan. They made some big moves that have done some big things for them. As far as marketing goes, especially in the US, the cards, the tops trading cards that they have now. I mean, it's huge. I mean, the first year they did that a
Yep.
couple years ago. Um, some of those go for big, big, big money. So that's definitely getting people interested that may not have been interested before. And then obviously the Netflix documentary. And a lot of people say, why can't we've had this discussion with, some drivers, and between me and you, we've had this discussion a lot. IndyCar, NASCAR, like, IndyCar needs Drive to Survive because, they can be big, they can get bigger too, like Formula One. And we've talked about this with drivers, like it's all circumstantial. It may not, just because it works for Formula One doesn't mean it will work for IndyCar. It just has to be the right balance.
I agree. Good friend of the show, Jagger Jones, was actually working out there, giving tours on the back of a semi trailer, oddly enough. All right. We weren't sure if he's going to join us or not. Jagger Jones is joining us after a uh, long weekend working as like had a job this weekend at the F1 race in Coda. And thanks for joining the show, Jagger.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. Hopefully there's no echo. I'm actually at Mr. Bowie himself's house here in Indianapolis. So quite the duo going on here.
Bowie just has Road to Indy driver just stashed away in his house.
Yeah. And then you get to hear Gypsy barking in the background.
Yes.
Because she has not warmed up to Jagger yet.
No, I wouldn't say I am the most loved by animals for some reason. Maybe it's because I'm a little hesitant back. So we got to work on that one for sure.
Aren't you allergic?
A little bit to cats, but mostly when I was younger, but it's kind of worn off a little bit. But dogs, I've never had any issues with that.
Oh.
He and Simon keep a respectable distance from each other, but the dogs, they haven't warmed up to him yet.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Simon's my favorite one out of all of them.
That's funny. So first off, Jagger, have you been to a Formula One race before?
I have, but it was quite a while ago. It was 2015 Silverstone, the British Grand Prix.
Oh.
I was racing in Belgium, and the week before was the F1 race at Silverstone. So I went to that as a fan, watched. It was a cool experience. But since then, it's been quite a while, and that was the only one I'd been to before this past weekend at Coda.
So talk a little bit about the weekend and kind of what you did and what's the name of the it's like F1 Experiences, are the name of it?
Yes. So I worked with Expert Hosts, which handles kind of a lot of the hospitality and events for F1 Paddock Club and F1 Experiences. So really the main suites that either companies buy out those passes or you individually can purchase those passes. And it's basically what it is, Paddock Club. It's a club suite right above the paddock. So quite really nice suites, nice food, nice drinks, great place to watch the race. And the events that they also offer, if you buy into those tickets, are there's quite a few different things, but the two that I handled were the track tours, which anyone that's in the Paddock Club has access to on Friday and Saturday, and actually even Thursday as well this weekend. So basically what I did was we would help load about 70, 80 people in a group onto these big flatbed semi trucks, which had railings around them. And the semi would drive around, do a full lap of Coda of the track. And me and another one of the hosts were on the microphone on the semi truck with all the guests. There's big speakers and microphones, and we kind of just went through the lap, made it an entertaining 15 minutes or so, kind of explained what the drivers will go through at a track like Coda, and kind of maybe talked a little bit about F1 and what to expect on the weekend, all while kind of trying to make it as entertaining as possible, which obviously wasn't too hard, being it was a Formula One race is pretty entertaining in itself. Everyone's pretty happy to be there, but kind of just a lot about speaking about the corners and DRS and stuff like that some of the fans might not know about necessarily too well.
So are most of the hosts, are they like drivers like yourself, or kind of what are the requirements for somebody to be a
Yes.
host?
So all the hosts have some sort of background in racing, most being current drivers or past drivers, kind of from all over the world, really. I think there was about 40 of us as hosts this weekend. I got to meet people from the main people who started it are from England. So there's quite a few British people, a lot of Mexicans as well, especially with the race being in Mexico next weekend. They brought a lot of the people working next weekend as well to this weekend. A lot of Brazilians, a few people from France, Germany, Canada, I believe, and then miscellaneous people from all over. So just a wide variety, about 40 people, all being, like I said, race car drivers or having some sort of engineering background in racing or some sort of other background in racing as well. And that's not the only thing we would do. I mean, I would drive people in shuttles kind of around the track to different parts of the track, which was pretty cool because, I mean, I got to stand out there and watch in different corners of the track as well. Other people did paddock tours, so they would take people through the paddock, kind of show them the whole paddock. One guy who actually has an engineering background, what he does through them is, I thought this was quite cool. I wouldn't mind doing this eventually, maybe if I have more time working with them in the future. But he would go on the pit lane during the sessions with like a group of 5 people, and they had kind of like what Ferrari and Red Bull has, like a booth sitting right out on the other side of pit lane where they can see the front straightaway, and they're doing all the data and stuff. That's what the teams are. They have their whole I don't know what you call it, pit box basically set up out there, and they have one of those that has F1 all written on it, and he's up there with 5 guests who pay for this or are given this experience. I don't know how they necessarily get that, but he has all the data there, and they have headphones on and they're talking to each other, and he's kind of like explaining all the data and like what the teams are looking at and the strategy, and he's explaining it to these people that might not know too much about racing. So I thought that was a cool experience. So there's a lot of different things they do, and overall it was a really fun weekend. I mean, there was so many people there. I've been able to tell the huge growth of F1 in Formula One lately by just, especially people like at my college that you would never expect. A lot of girls as well, my age that I go to school with are huge F1 fans, all from the Netflix show. And I mean, you definitely hear about it a little bit, but like going to that race this weekend, I just saw that firsthand, and I'm like, wow, like this is even bigger. F1 in America is even bigger now than I thought it was. So many people this weekend, and it's cool. Like at the F1 races, literally every single fan is wearing a Ferrari, a McLaren, or Mercedes shirt. Like the merch sales must be insane. But yeah, it was a cool experience. Kind of got to see a race from a different perspective, not just in the race car or there for my own racing for whatever reason. So it was a cool experience, and hopefully maybe if I have some weekends off next year, I'd like to go to some other countries and do it. That would be pretty cool.
So what would you say if you had to pick one thing, your favorite thing, maybe you got to see, favorite person, maybe you got to meet? Would you have one?
I hung out with Willie T. Ribs quite a bit this weekend. He's a pretty awesome guy. I mean, if you're having a conversation with him, it's nothing short of, it's very entertaining to say the least. He's quite the character. I like that. I would say, I mean, I didn't really get to meet I didn't really meet any of the drivers too much. I was kind of pretty busy doing all that, the paddock club and F1 experience type stuff, but definitely met a lot of cool people throughout the weekend that I was driving around or talking to, or had on one of the trucks. So, I mean, just kind of get to meet a little bit of people from all over, and a lot of them. So, I mean, it was basically just a whole weekend of socializing while getting to watch an F1 race. So it was quite a fun experience.
Did you ever think that you would be on the back of a flatbed entertaining fans at a F1 race?
I mean, you got to experience it all, I guess. It was actually probably pretty helpful skill. I mean, I did at least 15, I would say about 15 of those if I had to make a estimate. Yeah, probably like an average of 3 or 4 each day. So I think there was, I mean, probably a good thing. I mean, after a while, like the first 2 were a little bit okay. I mean, I've always grown up doing interviews and podcasts like this, but it's a little different when you're not just talking about yourself and you have to entertain people for like 15 minutes that are standing there listening to you. But I mean, after a while, you kind of get in a rhythm with it. Sure. And I kind of started to like it more, the more ones I did, kind of try to make each one a little bit smoother and maybe even a little bit more entertaining than the one before. So it was pretty cool. I think I picked up some valuable skills from it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, so I guess 2023, real quick, going to be a big year for you, and you're actually in town. The reason why you're here in Indianapolis now is because you will be doing, you did your CFIT today, correct?
Yes, I did. Got all fitted in the car today. Did a little bit of media stuff, some photos and videos out at the Speedway as well today. So pretty productive day. Tomorrow, getting finished up, getting fitted in the car. So testing soon. I don't know for sure the date yet of when we'll actually hit the track, but hopefully it's sooner or later because I don't know how much longer I can wait.
I saw you got to spend some time today with Old Calhoun, so that's definitely definitely a car that's had a little bit of impact on your family, I would say, just a little bit, right, Scott?
Well, like I told him earlier, and I think I told you too. I dubbed it the money maker.
Yeah, of course. It's cool. We were getting some shots of the 98, definitely a very legendary and lots of meaning to that number with my family, and gonna have it on my car next
Yeah.
year. So last time I think I ran the 98 was either in legend cars or karting. So quite a few years since then. So kind of I am definitely looking forward to having that on the car.
Well, now all your Instagram and Twitter handles will make sense to people.
Yeah.
Yes, at least the Twitter for sure, the 98 number. Maybe. Well, I don't know if I'll change the Instagram back to something with 98. I kind of like the name I got going now. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, with the 6. Well,
Mhm.
Jagger, it's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Too bad we couldn't have got rid of Scott again like we did the last time.
I know, right?
We had to actually look
I can tell you, it definitely helps the views. When you guys get rid of me, you guys just do the interviews yourselves, man. That kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. Everybody wants to watch you two.
That's funny. Probably all the views were Scott watching it to be like, it was probably all him. The views. He's I know I'm better than these guys. See, listen.
I was rage watching.
Yeah.
Rage watching. So right after this, Jagger, will be our interview with Sting Ray Robb. And he said he went back and he listened to podcasts, and guess what? It was the one without Scott. It was the one that we did with JR. So there you go.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hopefully Sting Ray did a good job and he'll keep all your fans entertained for the rest of this video.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jagger, and best of luck in 2023. We'll definitely be chatting with you a few times before then.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Our guest today is a 2020 Indy Pro 2000 champion and the 2022 Indy Lights Championship runner-up. We are joined by Sting Ray Robb. Sting Ray, thank you so much for joining us. How's it going today?
Pretty good. Thank you guys for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I know I'm not going to ask the question everyone asks you. Sting Ray, your real name. We know it's your real name.
I can appreciate that. Thank you.
And so one of our good friends of the show is Jagger Jones, which I know you've raced with a little bit. And so we were joking with him last week, and I think Scott asked him if he had any questions for you. And one of them had something to do with how many people ask you if your real name is Sting Ray.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Every person that I meet. There hasn't been a single time I've introduced myself where they haven't asked me how or where I got my name. So there's your answer. If I can count up as many people as I've met, that's how many people I've told.
And his last question was, why do you live in Idaho?
Why do I live in Idaho? Man, it's awesome here. I can't complain. There's so much to do other than race car driving. There's nothing like that here. So we always have to travel. So, but he's down in Arizona, right? So I don't know what he's doing down there either.
Well, he's going to school in High Point University.
Okay.
It's north of Charlotte, right, Scott?
I think so. Yeah.
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 So, I guess a little bit more racing there, but
so basically it's just Sting Ray Robb and Randy Tolsma, and that's about it for Idaho racers.
Well, I think Davey Hamilton might be on that list as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than the three of us, I don't know of many more.
Right.
Davey's doing his best. He's got his son running. He runs. I mean, he's doing everything he can for Idaho. So.
Yeah. Hopefully, I can join that party here soon, being an IndyCar driver from Idaho. So It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a good place to be from, and it's nice to have a place to come back to, but it does make it hard to be a race car driver. I think part of it is that we have so many activities. I went mountain biking this morning. I went rock climbing this afternoon. Now I'm talking to you guys. So people just are not as active in the racing community just because they have other things, other hobbies.
Right.
So talk a little bit about how you got into racing. So I'm guessing you grew up in Idaho, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So how does someone who grows up in Idaho get involved with racing?
So this is where I'm going to explain my name a little bit. So my parents were big Corvette fans. So that's why I'm named Sting Ray. I was named after the Sting Ray Corvette. So I grew up around cool old cars. My dad's got a 1966 Sting Ray Corvette. So he actually ended up starting the area's first Corvette club. And so I was going to the Corvette club meetings, going to autocross events, drag races from the time I could stand pretty much. I mean, I actually took my first steps at a Corvette club meeting. And so I was always wanting to be in the fast cars, going fast. And my dad would put me in the passenger seat and I'd be like, faster, 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 trying to get him to step on the throttle more. And then when I was around 4 years old, I watched Travis Pastrana. Everyone knows who Travis Pastrana
Absolutely.
is, but he was in, I think it was a Nitro Circus film, and he jumped a go-kart into a foam pit. And the 4-year-old me thought that was the coolest thing ever. And was like, oh my goodness, I want one for my birthday. So for my 5th birthday, my parents got me a go-kart. And then from there, it was just game over. We went out to our local kart track, which at the time, the only one that we had around here was just an 1/8 mile, super, super bumpy short course. And then from there, it was kind of like, okay, we're going to go to Salt Lake. We're going to go to Tri-Cities, Washington. And then we started traveling to all the IKF events down in California, started getting into the SCUSA events. So traveling the whole West Coast, even up into Canada. So then when I turned 9, let's see, actually I might've been 8. I think the year was 2009. So yeah, I was 8 when we first went, or maybe 2010. I can't remember. So long ago now, but we started traveling internationally. I did my first race in Italy. And then we ended up doing the Florida Winter Tour. And so at that point we were gone around 42 weekends a year, just for go-karts. And so I did that from the time I was 5 to around 14. And then I made the transition to cars.
Now, would you say you had a racing goal at that point? Like, some people grow up and they say, I want to race in the Indy 500 or Formula One. Like, did you have anything that was clear back then?
For sure. I mean, every kid that drives dreams of being an F1 driver. At that time, when I was first getting into go-karting, the Ayrton Senna documentary came out. And I thought that he was the coolest guy on the planet just because that movie was just so inspiring. And so I was like, okay, I want to be an F1 driver. I want to drive for McLaren. I want to achieve all these things. And then, as I grew up, I kind of evolved that idea of being an open wheel race car driver. And I found out about the IndyCar series in America and being able to stay home and, in a place where I can travel around and not be in foreign countries all the time was pretty cool. But, along the way, my parents always told me that I just needed to have fun. They said, if you want to go play basketball next week or baseball this week or whatever else, like you can go do that and we can quit racing. And so they kind of gave me the freedom to choose my own path a little bit. And so I still played basketball and baseball and snow skied and golfed. And that was amidst all the racing plus going to school and everything else. So I was a busy kid, but definitely I had the goal of making it to a top level and being a world champion and, all the essentials of a good race car driver.
Where did the F1 dream kind of veer off into IndyCar?
I think, first off, I didn't know about IndyCar starting out. F1 was obviously the more well-known option, and it still is today. I mean, especially with the Netflix series, I'll be walking down the street and meet someone, and then I start talking. Oh, I'm a race car driver. I'm in open wheels. Like, oh, the Formula One series. I'm like, not quite. You have to explain it a little bit, but I think that when it was during that transition from karts to cars, actually, even before that, I was racing in Italy for the CRG factory team in go-karts. And I mean, it was tough over there. I mean, the competition is really, really good, but even more so, it's hard to be away from family. It's hard to be, kind of out of your element in that sense. And you have to really dive into the culture there in order to be competitive. And that's not to say that I couldn't have done that, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I missed being with my people a little bit. I missed the culture here in America. And so when I heard about the road to Indy was kind of like the first step into open wheel here. that sounded really appealing just because it was like a perfect straight ladder system to IndyCar. And it was the only one that was accessible to American drivers, it seemed like. As an American, it's really hard to step into the European open wheel series. And very few do it. You know, my manager is Peter Rossi and his son is Alexander Rossi. And so he was one of those drivers that decided to go that Formula One route. And he fully committed to it, moved over there, did really well in F2, F3, everything else. And then ended up not getting a really fair shake in F1, but he comes over here and he gets a fair shake and he does really well and he's having fun, he's competitive. And I think that IndyCar just is so much more attractive to myself because the racer in me wants to be competitive. I want to win races. I want to be on podiums. I want to fight for championships. And in Formula One, you can't do that unless you're with the top 2 teams. But over here, you got 5, 6, 7, 8 drivers that are fighting in a championship with 3 or 4 different teams. And that just seems like the best racing in the world to me. I mean, that reminds me of my go-kart days where you got a pack of 10 carts and they're swapping 1st and 10th every lap. You know, so it's fun to see that the real sort of racecraft side, and you still get the strategy side. And it's not so much about, I mean, obviously the teams make a big difference, and you're going to see that in any series. But it's not about who's breaking the budget cap to, you know, win a world championship, to bring up recent things. But, you know, it seems like a more appealing series to drivers.
So before the road to Indy, you actually did some NASCAR K&N races, which is, you know, a big difference from, you know, the Formula One route or road to Indy. So kind of how did that come about?
Yeah. So when I was making the transition from karts to cars, I wanted to make sure that open wheel was the way that I for sure wanted to go. So I did as much crazy stuff as I could do, or that my parents would allow me to do. So 2016 was kind of like my do it all year. I did the Skip Barber series, I think, to open the season. I did the Formula Speed series down in California. I did the K&N series. I did a couple races, one at the road course at Utah Motorsports campus, and then at the Meridian Speedway here in Idaho. And then I did dirt cars. I did some Corvettes at the Bondurant Driving School. And so I just wanted to try everything that I could and make sure, okay, open wheel is the thing that I wanted to do. And so I kind of settled on that after trying all of those. You know, the NASCAR series was really fun, but it was totally different. Like you said, way different than the Formula One dream. And I think growing up in go-karts, it's kind of hard to transition to, you know, a light, super nimble, fast reacting, maybe underpowered kart to a big, heavy taxi cab with a ton of horsepower. So, I mean, 2016, I was 14, turning 15 at the time. So I was still really young and just getting into cars. And so I didn't have any idea how to drive the things, but it was still a blast to do. And like I said, I did the dirt car race. Sorry. And that really was, I mean, that's another level. Those guys are insane. They can wheel it for sure. I did the dirt modified.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny too. So it was actually the pit crew that I had on the K&N car. They were the same guys that were putting the dirt modified car together. And they pretty much said, hey, we think that we have a car that we can run you in. Do you want to come down and try it out? I'm like, sure. I thought it was just gonna be like, you know, a local regional race or whatever. Well, they pull me out to Pahrump dirt track there in Nevada and give me like 2 hours on the track. I said, all right, this is fine, little quarter mile or whatever it was. And at that time, that was the longest oval I'd been on. I'm like, okay. Well, the next night, the real race started. I'm like, well, where is it? And they're like, oh, it's at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Well, it's like the national dirt car event or something that I show up to for my first time. And it's a half-mile oval. And I got my butt whooped. I mean, I got waxed by everyone there. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but it was a blast.
See, I think it's really interesting because we were talking about Jagger Jones, but you and Jagger Jones kind of had a very similar path. I mean, he did the NASCAR K&N series as well. And then obviously went right into the road to Indy this past year and USF 2000. And he did the late model stuff as well. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just kind of the natural path. He stuck with the left turns a little bit longer than I did,
Right.
But it's good to see him in an open wheel car. I think that he'll do well next year in Indy Lights with Cape.
So I mean, for you, explain a little bit. Like, obviously, you drove the Indy Pro cars and then Indy Lights cars. What was kind of the jump between the series as far as the cars go? Like, was it a big learning curve, or was not that big of a deal for you?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a big learning curve. I hadn't transitioned into a car really before running Indy Pro. I mean, I didn't do USF 2000 like most drivers did. And that was because the year that I was stepping into the road to Indy was the last year of the Pro Mazda car at that time.
Hmm.
And it was actually cheaper to run in that car than it was the USF 2000 car. And so we just made the decision, screw it. We're not going to, spend this bunch of money to do a series that's right below and whatever else. It was what we could afford at the time, really. And so I did the Pro Mazda car, stepped in the Indy Pro 2000 car, still had no clue what I was doing that first year. And then joined on with Juncos and won the championship in my second year with them. And then making that transition to the Indy Lights car. I mean, the driving style was so different. And I don't know if that's the car itself or the tires or what, but I mean, the Indy Pro 2000 car is lightweight, super nimble, short wheelbase. It's got decent power, or it did at the time. They've tuned them down a little bit since then. And so you can really, drive it like a go-kart. You drive it in on the nose and the rear end stays behind you really well. And then in the rain, it was just, you throw the thing around and it's gonna work. But then stepping into the Indy Lights car, the thing feels like it's on a knife edge 100% of the time. And it likes to be loose. And so I had to really learn how to drive off the rear end of the car, driving a loose car. And then learning the different braking techniques and things like that. It was a big transition. So this year was obviously a little bit better than last. And I think part of that was just working with the experience that Andretti had and their knowledge and their, past data that they've got from drivers like Colton Herta or Pato O'Ward or Al Rasky or Kyle Kirkwood. Those are all really, really well-known and really talented drivers. And so it's easy to go back and kind of see what they're doing, see what worked for them, see what their transition was like, and then apply that to my transition.
You're talking about transition. One of the things, obviously, it's very important. And you can tell you're extremely fit, is the fitness level that you have to have. And was that something that you were prepared for
No.
when you come into Indy Pro?
No. I think that first year in Indy Pro, I probably weighed $140 maybe. But I was 6'1" at the time. So, I was a tall string bean of a kid. And so, I would get into races and I would just fall apart at the end of them. So I actually, in 2020, I started going to Pit Fit training. I visited with them before, one-off visits, but living in Idaho, it was hard to, be out there. So I finally just said, all right, for the summer, I'm going to live in a hotel in Indianapolis between the races. And I got in shape. And I think that honestly is what helped me win the championship, because in a car, you don't really realize it because you're so focused. The adrenaline is so high that you can't really feel the fatigue until it's time to do something and you can't get your body to do it. And really, when it comes down to, it's not really turning the car into a turn, it's reacting. The car is always going to be moving around. It's always on that knife edge. And so you're always catching it and reacting and trying to stay on top of it. And when you lose that endurance, you kind of lose that sharpness to stay on top of the car, and it would get away from you. And so that's what I noticed towards the beginning of that 2020 season was like, okay, I'm fit enough now that I can stay on top of the car and just wheel the thing for the whole entire race. And then the same thing stepping up in Indy Lights. The Indy Lights car was like double of what the Indy Pro car was initially for me. And, one of my first tests in the Indy Lights car was around Barber Motorsports Park. And that's a high G-force, big compression track. And I had never driven anything with the high downforce like an Indy Lights car. And I remember there's the big compression in the right-hander up the hill there, up and over the top. And my neck was out of shape. My arms were out of shape. And there was one lap, I just finally just let off the gas. I'm like, I can't even push the gas anymore because I'm too busy trying to hold my head up around the turn. I'm locking my elbow against the side of the cockpit. So since then, it's gotten a lot better. But at the time, it's definitely a learning curve on the sense of what you need to do outside of the car to be ready when you step in.
Yeah, I think when you look at somebody like the Tony Kanans and Scott Dixons of the world, Tony, it's a little more obvious. It's a little less obvious with Scott, but people just have no idea how incredibly fit and strong they really are. And they have to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're talking in an IndyCar race, it's 2.5 hours in a car with 4 Gs, and you're doing that nonstop. You get a pit stop every hour or so or something, but it's pretty incredible to think like those guys are driving a race car with super high downforce and no power steering for an extended period of time. And you're not getting any food, you're not getting a recharge, you're just in there wheeling the thing for that long. So yeah, I mean, your heart rate is anywhere from 155 to 180 for 2 to 2.5 hours. I mean, you're going to be exhausted by the end of that.
Right.
So, I mean, you were talking a little bit about the pit fit training. What is it with the pit fit training? Like, so for example, so say if you didn't do pit fit and you were just in extremely good shape, you did triathlons, you did everything. I mean, just best physical condition of your life, but you didn't do pit fit. And then, you know, if someone does the same thing and they add on pit fit, do you think pit fit really makes that much of a difference?
100%. I think that if you were to take one of the best athletes in the world and put them in a race car, they'd still get their butts whooped. I mean, it's just it's a different muscle group. I mean, there's things in a race car that you don't realize are even there, things that are, you know, in your body that you need to prepare for. I mean, especially your neck. I mean, your neck is a big component of driving a race car well, because you can't turn your head. You can't see where you're going. You can't see where you're going. You don't know how to react or whatever else. So, I mean, that's something that we don't really work on a ton, but it's just the little things here and there, building that little bit of extra strength up over time. It makes a difference. And I mean, the biggest thing with pit fit, I think, is that it's a well balance of strength and endurance building. So they kind of take the philosophy of endurance training athletes and then make sure that you're still lightweight, you're fit, you're healthy, so that you can get in the car, not be, you know, bulked up, overweight, and then still be strong enough. So they're always kind of playing catch-22 and working each driver accordingly. And they have different cycles that they go on. And also, I mean, there's a big focus aspect of racing, a big mental side. And what they do there, they do a lot of reaction training, a lot of real world training to, you know, train your eyes to be quick. Because if your eyes aren't quick, you're not going to be able to keep up with what's happening and you feel like you're always behind. And so, I mean, there's things that we used to learn in karting, you know, that we always said, you go where your eyes go and keep your eyes up, keep your eyes up. And so what that would do is it would drive your eyes forward so that you're always seeing what's in front of you. You're always anticipating instead of reacting to the car. And so that's what pit fit does, because at this level, you don't get to train all the time in the car. You're not testing a car every weekend. I mean, during the racing season, you're busy, but during the next 6 months, we're not doing a whole lot. And so you got to stay sharp so that when you get back in the car, you can still be competitive.
Yeah, while I was watching, while I was doing a little research before the show, and you talks about how much, you know, you talk about how much you like basketball and that sort of thing, and that's the one huge difference between any other sport in the world and auto racing, is that you can literally go out into your backyard, driveway, local court, and you can run, you can kick a football, you can have somebody throw you passes, whatever, you know, shoot baskets. Man, in auto racing, it's just not that way. And it's just unfortunately, you have to do so much training away from the cars before you ever get into cars. And of course, the sim work helps a little bit today. I don't, I mean, you hear some guys, they really like it because it teaches them the track, but you can't get the feel of the car.
Yeah,
What the
absolutely.
car's like. And it's just that's such a huge difference. Plus your focus has to be, I mean, you have to be completely focused, like you said, for 2.5, 3 hours, whatever it is. And it's just auto racing is such a different animal.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking back to, I mean, the most physical race that I think I've ever been in was the Nashville Grand Prix this year. And part of the reasoning behind that was it was just so stinking hot. I mean, it was,
Right.
I think on that day, it was like 95 and 80% humidity or something ridiculous. And you got your helmet on and your head sock and your 2-layer suit and your Nomex and your gloves and your shoes and your Nomex socks. And you're not getting any forced air in the car and there's no water. And you have to go out there and wheel a overpowered, no power steering, high downforce, grippy tired race car for an hour across the bumpiest circuit in America. And it's like, good luck, have fun. And I remember, I mean, I'd get halfway through the race and I'd crack my visor a little bit on the straightaway just to dry my forehead out so the sweat wasn't running into my eyes. But you get out of the car and I felt like I had a heat stroke and my body was shutting down. I just sat down on the side pod and was like, I just gave everything that I had. And if I was in an IndyCar race, I'd still have another hour and a half to go.
Right.
So, It's just little things like that. I mean, the heat alone is enough to drive you crazy. And so like at PitFit, what we'll do, like on our endurance cardio days, we'll get in the sauna after. And so we'll go sit in the sauna for 30 minutes at 130, 140 degrees just to acclimate our body to that high temperatures.
Yeah, we had Dr. Olvey on, and he was talking about different ways. He didn't give a lot of specifics, but he was saying how you can get your body to accept that type of heat level. But you have to be in those environments, and just basically train your body to get used to it.
Yeah. It sucks while you're in the training, but it pays off once you're on the racetrack.
Right.
Absolutely. So, talk a little bit about it, but so you win the Indy Pro Championship in 2020. And the big thing now is a Road to Indy scholarship. So fortunately, you were able to use that Road to Indy scholarship to get into Indy Lights. Talk a little bit about how important you think that scholarship is, because I mean, really, and I know things have changed a little bit this year with with the scholarship. So it may not be the best question, but at least for you, you were able to use it to get into Indy Lights, right? So I mean, a lot of series don't have any, programs like that. So I'm sure that it definitely helped you get into Indy Lights.
Well, that was a big influence why I chose the Road to Indy, because at the time, you're right. Like there were no series out there that you could step into and say, okay, I have a hope of getting into the next step, because if I do well here, there's going to be funding to get me to that top level, whatever it is. And I think, I mean, for most drivers, I guess it's changing. The tide's changing a little bit. You're seeing a little bit of the wealthier, family-backed drivers step up into Formula One or IndyCar because they can, based off of their funding. Whereas there's some talent out there that just doesn't make it because they don't have the backing to do that. So I was a little bit in that case. My family owns they used to own just a small grocery store, and it was enough to pay for my karting. And so when I stepped into open wheel racing, we had to go outside of our own means to make it and to continue in the sport. And so winning that championship in 2020, if I didn't win that championship, I wouldn't have continued on. I would have probably, that would have been my last year in racing as far as open wheel goes. But since I won it, Victor Franzoni said it best. He was a driver that won the Pro Mazda Championship in 2017, I believe, and got the scholarship to move up in Indy Lights. And he said that it's not only providing a way to that top level, it's providing a hope to get to that top level. Right. And so I think for many drivers, it's not just the funding and the backing, the physical side of things, it's the mental side of, this is what I'm striving for. I have a way, I have a hope I can get there. And there's not many other places in the world that you can have that. I mean, you're looking at drivers that are coming over to IndyCar now from Formula 2 that are kind of getting that same experience, right? They're not just going through the Road to Indy and getting those scholarships, but they see, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's like the American dream, right? There's just a lot of opportunity here. And I mean, the Road to Indy just amplified that with the scholarship. It makes a way for drivers that have the talent and maybe not the rest of it to step up into the next level.
So let me ask you, because obviously anybody that's followed it, things have changed a little bit in the Indy Lights Championship.
Yeah, you could say that.
So as a driver, and I know Levi's, what they're saying is that, hey, I think the top three are getting paid, like are getting paid prize money. As a driver in that series, while I mean, I'm not saying 40,000 to win or whatever it was or is something to poo-poo. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, as somebody in that series, does that payout really matter to you as much as that scholarship at the end of the year?
This is kind of a trick question. I have to be careful what I say here. I mean, I haven't been told on what to say on the subject, but I want to honor what they're doing and what they're planning on doing. So I do think that Penske is doing good things in the Indy Lights series. And I think what I see them doing more is kind of trying to turn it into a semi-pro series where drivers can get paid to be there. They're trying to promote it on the Peacock TV by NBC Sports app. And they're trying to turn it into a series that people can follow along with. Because I mean, honestly, this last year, the racing was unbelievable in the Indy Lights series. I mean, it's really, really good racing at that level. And I think that they're trying to encourage guys that maybe are trying to get to that top level, that are kind of on that edge of not making it maybe, to spend a year in Indy Lights and let the competition kind of build itself up, and you're kind of sustaining the living of the drivers in the meantime with the give out of the podiums or whatever else. But for drivers like Linus, or myself even, we've worked our entire lives, it seems like, to get to that top level. And obviously, you win the championship, you got enough talent that you should make that step up. So I guess you're kind of snatching one dream to almost provide for several others. So I think it is a bit of an unfortunate deal that there isn't a way to IndyCar now for drivers like Linus or myself, where you win the championship, finish second in the championship, and you can't get the funding to step up. You got to go get the sponsors and do all the off-track stuff that you're still doing negotiations where it should be a shoe-in almost, But maybe the future of motorsports is going to look differently than what we've had in the past. Maybe they're trying to take it a new way. Maybe it'll be like Formula 2 or Formula 1, where you're seeing guys that, or maybe they're moving away from that, where it's just a development series. Maybe it's a home for some drivers that are really competitive, and that's just what it is. And with the car counts going up, I think that you could see that more and more. A true semi-pro series where it is a development series, but it allows people to stay there maybe a little bit longer and not move in and out so fast. And then you're going to see better car counts because of that, better racing, more teams. And that's just going to help the series overall.
I would tell you that I fully understand what they're doing, and I have no disrespect for it. I would say that I don't think an Xfinity Series model works for that. That's my opinion. I just don't see it work, because what, it's 17, what are you going to be 28, 29 running Indy Light? I just, you going to run from 21 to 26 or 18 to 24. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just, me personally, I'm not sure that type of series works. And I realize that I'm not trying to, for anybody listening, I'm not speaking for Sting Ray here. I'm speaking for myself. It's the model is either you get there and you make it, and you don't. If you don't, you can't do it again. You find something else. And that's kind of how the model is as of now. And personally, I think that's a good model, because the end goal was getting the Indy cars, which, if you couldn't win the championship, or if you couldn't run the top three in the championship, should you stay running in that series? I just, 3 years from now, I just don't.
Yeah.
I personally understand what they're doing. I just,
it's a little bit different in the NASCAR world, but I think that we're in a different spot in motorsports now than we've ever been. I think that you're seeing a pool of drivers that's so deep. We're seeing a lot of quality and quantity, and you got to give the drivers a place to go. And so maybe they're seeing that as an opportunity for the series. But I don't know. I'm not Roger Penske. I'm not Levi. I think that they know more than myself, and I'm just a driver that sees the outside. So
I could see this, if this was the opposite argument. Hey, the IndyCar grid's getting so big, we're going to have to start sending people home, and we don't necessarily want to do that. And if you're trying to regulate it a little bit that way, I kind of get that, because they are running very close to running out pit stalls at some of these tracks, like Mid Ohio and that sort of thing, if they get too many more cars.
Yeah. Which I think that'll change in 2024 with the hybrid systems coming in. I think, from what I've heard, rumors say that car count is going to go down a little bit because of that. So those are even more seats that are going away for potential drivers.
Right. Yeah. And again, I don't want to harp on this too much. It just is unforeseen turn of events than this exact time last year.
Agreed, 100%. And I think that, I mean, even from July, it's way different than anyone was expecting. I mean, I know that.
Right.
I mean, I work out with Linus, so I get to hear his side of the story on the scholarship, and I mean, I think that it was a bit of an interesting ordeal that he had to go through, and I feel bad for him. So, yeah, hopefully it'll be more clear in the future, and maybe it'll work out for the best.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
So your focus now obviously is IndyCar, understandably. And you've done one IndyCar test so far, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I did a test with Andretti at Mid Ohio earlier this year.
So a little bit about that experience, kind of what you thought kind of going into it and kind of how the car was compared to what you may have thought it would be like, and compared to the Indy Lights car.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, the Indy Lights car, I think, is a good stepping stone to the Indy car. And I gotten to talk with Kyle Kirkwood and Devlin DiFrancesco and captured their thoughts a little bit on what that step was like for them. And it's kind of funny. They all said the same thing. They said the Indy car was easier to drive than the Indy Lights car. And I didn't believe it until I stepped into the Indy car. And don't get me wrong, the thing has got a lot of power. It's got a lot of downforce. And I think the best way to describe it is it does everything you want it to do. The Indy Lights car you're kind of wrestling with all the time. It's a longer wheelbase, heavier car than what you run in normal junior formulas. And you step into an Indy car, and it's just a better designed, better handling version of an Indy Lights car. So I was really happy with that. I mean, I think that for my first test day, I did really good. I was comparing a little bit of data with Colton Herta's time from the weekend previous, but it was so much fun. I mean, especially being there with, well, actually, side note here, my roommate in Indianapolis is a friend of mine that I grew up go-karting with, and he's now a mechanic with Andretti. And so I've known him since I was 9 years old. And we go to this IndyCar test, and he's the one strapping me into the race car. And so I'm getting to experience that with him, and my family was there. And then my engineer in Indy Lights was also my engineer at the IndyCar test. And so it's just like all this stuff is going on behind the scenes that was just making it such a cool experience. And then I'm driving an IndyCar on top of it. So, I mean, it was just an awesome, awesome day to have.
Now, from talking to people who've made that tradition or that transition, it seems like the big thing to get used to for people is pit stops. Now, have you ever done pit stops in any form of racing?
No, I have not. Usually, if you're doing a pit stop, it's something went wrong.
Right. Yeah. I mean, did now when you did the test, did they actually do like any pit stop simulations or anything like that?
No, I mean, the test was essentially just a shakeout to see what it was
Sure.
like to be in the car. I was just trying to maximize my seat time. I actually only had half a day. So the way that it worked was it was based off the scholarship I won in 2020. I earned a ride to get a half a day in IndyCar. So I actually shared the car with Christian Rasmussen, who got in that afternoon. And so I was out on track as much as possible. I mean, I got out of the car once during the whole 6 hours that I was supposed to be testing in the car. And that was just to, go get a drink of water, go to the bathroom and hop back in. It was 5 minutes. So, I mean, we tried a lot of different things on the car, different suspension curves, things that I hadn't really played with before that were kind of an introduction into the car. And they were just trying to check my feedback, check to make sure that I was driving the car properly, things like that. I mean, it was essentially just a regular test day where we would have been shaking the car down, trying different items, making sure that we're going quick.
Now, what was your impression on the windscreen, aero screen?
When the aero screen first came out, I was a little reluctant to like it. I do like the halo and the safety factor that it brings to many drivers. I think that it's something that should have been around a little bit sooner, but I loved the open air of the halo because
Sure.
say you're going down into turn 5 at Barber. It's that really high speed straightaway into a really downhill tight hairpin. And there's been times on track where I can feel the wind moving my helmet around. And then when that wind is not moving my helmet around, I know that the headwind has gone away and now I have a tailwind. So I have to brake a little bit earlier going into the corner. So in the Indian car, I don't have that feeling as much with the aero screen, or at least I didn't think so. But what I noticed was that the forced air coming through the front of the car, you can actually feel in the helmet, and you can feel how quick you're going based off of that. And so I could actually tell what the wind was doing based off of the forced air feeling. And so other than that, I mean, I really had no complaints. It wasn't any hotter in the car. It seemed like the reflection on the inside wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I was expecting to, see my helmet reflecting back at me. But I had none of those sensations. So I think that they've done a good job designing it. And getting it where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that was part of that early testing. They had to kind of redesign that so they didn't have those reflections in that.
Yeah, and I was surprised to see that, especially with my fluorescent yellow helmet, and I had my fluorescent yellow gloves on. Usually they're pretty reflective, and I didn't have any sensation of that, even at different sunlights. I mean, I was out on track pretty early in the morning, so the sun was just coming up, and then even midday, I mean, the track's fully lit, no issues. So it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a little bit more difficult getting in and out, but once you're used to it, it was easy, no problem.
So, obviously IndyCar is where you want to be. And I mean, where do you think you are right now as far as sitting in front of all your karting trophies? Where do you think you're going to be next year?
I'm excited. I think that we're getting some stuff done this off season. We're in conversations right now with a few teams. So I feel, obviously it's any driver's dream to make it to that top level, but when you can taste it, it just makes it that much more special. I mean, I feel like we're on the verge of getting there, and it's kind of cool to see because I have such a good team of people around me. What people don't realize is how dynamic the sport motorsports is. And it's not all up to the driver. I mean, all you see is the guy that's sitting in the car, pushing the pedals and winning the races, but there's way more going on behind the scenes of, the mechanics, the engineers, the managers, the funding side of things. My mom has been a big component of my career. She's been what we call my momager. She's my mom and she's my manager. So she's kind of the one pushing the buttons behind the scenes, making things happen. And so she's been, really busy this off season, getting some stuff done. And I'm super thankful to have her because she's just as excited as I am to see me make that next step. So hopefully I'll be back in an IndyCar soon in a test. I was supposed to be in one this last week, but it didn't pan out. So there's a lot of things that are moving. It's a very fluid off season. And I think that something's going to happen here soon, but I can't say any more than that right now.
Nor would we want you to. We mentioned a guy a while ago, and I want to kind of circle back to him because I think he's a great story, and that's Ricardo Juncos. Kind of talk about what it was like to work, because I don't know him. I mean, I've just listened to him talk, so I have no idea what he's like. But what's it kind of like working with Ricardo? Because I mean, it's impressive what he's done.
No, 100%. And I think, like I said just a minute ago, it's the team that's around him just as much as it is, the guy that's pushing the buttons. So Ricardo is a very passionate guy, and I got to race for him for 3 years and winning the championship for him and his team. I mean, his brother was my mechanic when we won the championship in 2020. So I felt like I was part of the family. And it's really cool to see how excited he is and how he's so involved in his team. I mean, he's got a lot of engineering background, and so he wants to be hands-on, helping out the team as much as he could. And during 2020, I think a big part of the reason that we won the championship is because he was there at every single event in the engineering room, listening to me talk with my engineer, making calls, saying this, watching the races, watching what was happening on track, and seeing all the things, and then comparing that to his experience level. And I think that he just really wants to be the best that he can be. And I think that you're seeing that now in IndyCar with Callum doing so well in the last race of the year, putting it on the front row. I think that you're seeing Ricardo's passion and talent being pushed through into the rest of the team, which is really cool.
Yeah, I feel like if they could just get the correct funding, the correct situation, and some time, man, I just feel like that team could be as strong as any of the top three. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
What he's done with what he's had to work with, pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about zero to hero. I mean, Ricardo
Right.
is that guy. I mean, he came from nothing, and in order to come from that and to be where he's at, what kind of a quality of a guy he is. I mean, that
Right,
says a
sure.
lot. I mean, his success is a product of who he is. And he didn't luck into it. I mean, he's worked for everything that he's got. And so it's just going to continue for him. I mean, I hope that you're going to see green cars on the front of many grids in the future. I think that he deserves that. I think his family deserves that. I think that team deserves that. I mean, they put a lot of time, effort, their hearts, blood, sweat, and tears into everything that they do. And like I said, Ricardo's brother being my mechanic, I got to see that firsthand. And it's actually kind of funny. We shared the same birthday weekend. And so when I won the championship in 2020, I swept the weekend at Indy Grand Prix, the triple header there. And I think I'm trying to remember what the days were exactly, but I think it was my birthday first and then his. And so I won on my birthday, and then I won on his birthday. And then we had a big party at the end of the weekend, and we both got our birthday presents of race wins. So it was pretty cool to, be in the celebration there with all of them.
Yeah, it just sounds like, I mean, it's fun times too, right? I mean, it's high pressure, but it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm Sting Ray. I don't have anything else for you. Do you have anything else, Scott?
Hey, I don't. I tell you, it's very impressive what you've done. Man, it's just, I'm glad to see another young, talented American come along. I wish you absolutely nothing but the ultimate success, and hopefully we'll hear that announcement soon.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate it.